now we look at the top 10 for this year, and obviously we know it's Kenny, Roman, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Kota Ibushi, Mox, Ospreay, Finn Balor, Shingo, and Rich Swann. So it's a very diverse list of all the companies, which is great. But the question I always had is, how the hell do you get 500 wrestlers? Who's responsible for 1 to 150, 200? Then after that, there's people that I've never even heard of before, and they're looking for their rankings too. I'll never forget when we were up in Providence in the mid 2000s, there was a guy called Alfredo the Danger Boy. And, and another guy was called the Wolfman or something. And they had high school Letterman jackets with their Pro Wrestling Illustrated rankings. Like Alfredo the Danger Boy, number 425.
Wow.
So for him, that was a big deal. So how are you finding all these wrestlers and also keeping in mind that this means something to every single one of them?
I think it's kind of been the opposite problem for us over the past couple years. I mean, maybe this is my own. I watch way too much wrestling in general, but I mean, now I can justify it with it's my job full time. But lots of independent and international wrestling. I mean, also we have opened up to, there were a handful of women who ranked in the 500 over the years, but it was only ever one or two every now and then. Now, because there's a lot more intergender wrestling, people competing for the same championships, it's our thinking that if someone's doing that, they can also appear in the 500. So you open that up, and we end up cutting people. I mean, I had a couple of people even I saw on Twitter, and I felt kind of bad, say, "Oh, I didn't make the list," and I'm thinking privately, "You were right there. We had to cut you because there's too many people." And then, I mean, when the list first started, that was not the case. I think 500 wrestlers who were really active, it was difficult to track them all and see what they were all doing. And obviously the internet's helped a lot in that regard. But I remember on the first list, I think was Mr. Fuji on it. And I don't think he wrestled.
I remember Zeus being 500 on maybe on the first one. And obviously, I mean, I think in his lifetime, Zeus wrestled 4 or 5 matches. So on that year, he got on the list, maybe wrestling once, something like that. So it's definitely changed. Yeah. As Kevin said, I think the harder job is who do you cut, right? And the criteria.
Well, and keeping track of it all. It is hard to keep track of this many wrestlers.
Roosh, who was the champion in Ring of Honor for most of the evaluation period, is not on our list. And that's in large part because of activity. I think it used to be pretty assumed that if you worked for WWE, you were getting on the list, right? Because you had to be one of the top 500 wrestlers in the world to make it to the big leagues. That's absolutely not the case anymore. So I do think it's a lot more kind of methodical the way we look at it now.
So how could Roosh not be in it? You mentioned, was he inactive or something? Or
yes, right. So we have, and this is actually one of my babies was actually coming up with the standards years ago. I came up with it. I don't even remember it now. Kevin probably remembers, but because this was always an issue, it was was this guy matches, active or not? What is it again?
It's 10 matches. Or 6 matches in 6 separate months to allow for, say, the Nick Aldises of the world who come out and have a big defense every month, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And Roosh just didn't work enough over the year. And kind of further complicating that this year and last year to some extent, too, is COVID, right? So there was a lot of wrestlers. It wasn't by their own choice that they weren't wrestling. There wasn't wrestling to be had, right? I mean, a lot of Nick Aldis is a good one. I mean, being the NWA champion, NWA was down longer than most companies. So Nick just didn't work a whole lot. He is on the list, though.
You mentioned, and I tried to find for the 500 spot. This is always the much discussed position to be in. And I tried to find a list of all the top 500, the number 500 guy. I couldn't find it anywhere. But this year, it is Lulu Pencil. And I had no freaking idea who Lulu Pencil is, except for now I think she's in AEW, maybe something.
She's in a company.
I get your coworker.
Everybody's in AEW. That's the thing. It's they snatch up
Lulu Pencil's in AEW. Who the hell is Lulu Pencil?
So Lulu Pencil has been coming out to the ring with Emi Sakura. She was with her for the Casino Battle Royale the other night. Yeah. But she hasn't, as far as I know, she hasn't actually wrestled for AEW yet. She's been like a manager, kind of a, I don't want to say comedy character because it's not done like over the top goofball. thing. It's more that she is not by trade a wrestler. She's actually, I believe, a journalist, but definitely a freelance writer of some kind. Right. And that's the name Lulu Pencil. She brings a giant pencil out with her. She wears overalls to the ring. She's still very much learning her craft, but working very, very hard at it. Doesn't get a lot of wins. Had this big rivalry with Chris Brooks over in Japan, who's a fantastic British wrestler who's been competing a lot in DDT and got to move, which is where Lulu Pencil wrestles. She has this huge cult following. And given that she was wrestling Chris Brooks and wrestling these intergender tag matches and working so hard, it felt right to acknowledge her. And then an independent wrestler by the name of Paro, who based out of Florida, just big hoss type, great guy. He suggested kind of offhandedly, tagged us, hey, why don't you make like an alternate for the 500th wrestler? So this got some steam behind it when people realized, like the Lulu Pencil fans, they call themselves the Pencil Army, realized that this was like, oh, hey, we really should petition them. And it got like a lot of steam behind it. And I thought, well, you know what? We can't reprint the magazine, but I don't see any reason why we can't have our artists make up a new cover with Lulu as the cover star, acknowledging she's number 500. And it really blew up. There's just people all over the world. People in Japan are very excited about it. And, you know, again, it's not available to buy. It's just like you can download it. It has the same specs as the print version. You can slap it on the cover of the magazine. I love that kind of stuff. I think, you know, it's fun. Someone like that would probably normally, at the level she's competing now, would not get on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So to be able to give her really diehard fans this, you know, kind of thing to latch onto was really cool. But you're right. The 500 spot's it's traditionally this kind of gimmick spot. Last year it was Dan the Dad, who's just this Midwestern dad. That's his gimmick. He wears jean shorts to the ring. He drinks sips a cup of a mug of coffee. It's usually that kind of thing. Shockwave the Robot one year.
That's what I was just looking up now. That was the one.
Shockwave the Robot. Al mentioned Zeus was number 1 in the first edition.
500, yeah.